presentation is available. Following the adjournment of the work.
Yeah, I think the application was not accepted. I have the full email from them. Let me look.
Good morning, distinguished delegates. I now declare open the 820th meeting of the Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space. Distinguished delegates, this morning we'll continue our consideration of Agenda Item 5, General Exchange of Views. We'll continue and hopefully conclude our consideration of Agenda Item 6, Ways and Means of Maintaining Outer Space for Peaceful Purposes. Time permitting, we'll begin our consideration of Agenda Item 7, Report of the Scientific and Technical Committee on its 61st session. We will then suspend the plenary meeting so that the Working Group on the Long-Term Sustainability of Outer Space Activities can hold its first meeting. Following the adjournment of the Working Group meeting, plenary will resume and will proceed with technical presentations. There are 5 technical presentations scheduled for this morning. Delegates are reminded that the full schedule of technical presentation is available on the session's webpage. Are there any questions or comments on this proposed schedule? I see no. Distinguished delegates, I would now like to continue our consideration of Agenda Item 5, General Exchange of Views. The first speaker on my list is the distinguished representative of Italy. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Distinguished delegates, Italy fully aligns with the statement delivered by the European Union, including a strong condemnation of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine and of the DPRK's repeated launches using ballistic missile technology. Indeed, while we celebrate and promote the peaceful use of outer space based on international law and UN Charter, we cannot avoid calling for the full respect of these key principles also on Earth, in Ukraine, in Korea, and in all the conflicts that unfortunately unfold in our world. Allow us now to add a few remarks in our national capacity. Mr. Chairman, Italy, through its space scientific and industrial community, plays a leading role in the field of space exploration and governance. It conducts its activities with a deep awareness of the importance and necessity of cooperating internationally and for the benefit of all humankind. I share what Director Oramani said yesterday. In her introductory statement, my country will keep on supporting UNOSA's mandate and its key role as space custodian for SDGs. We also support UNOSA in enhancing gender mainstreaming efforts to maximize the impact of our space-related activities, including in support of the Sustainable Development Goals. In this respect, we welcome the formal release of the Gender Mainstreaming Toolkit, this COPUOS session, and Canada's engagement in this regard. Let me provide 2 quick snapshots of our approach. The G7 leaders communique adopted last week at the G7 summit in Italy highlighted international guideline adopted at the COPUOS and the national efforts to develop further solutions for space debris mitigation and remediation and the development of space sustainability standards and regulations. These are indeed key challenges for the future of space activities. Italy is also organizing in July the first Italian-African meeting of heads of space agencies to launch a concrete but ambitious program to cooperate with the African nations on 3 key pillars of our space activities: education and training, space application and services for a sustainable future, and international partnership. But now I stop myself here, and I'm pleased to introduce Italian Space Agency President, Professor Teodoro Valente, to continue with our national statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, distinguished delegates. It's an honor for me to participate in this distinguished assembly for the first time. At this moment, when the international community is afflicted by conflicts and tensions of different natures, this UN Assembly acquires significant value, and our responsibility is great in maintaining outer space for peaceful purposes. First, I would like to thank the chairman of this committee Professor Sherif Mohamed Sethi, for his leadership and personal commitment in chairing this session. I would also like to thank the Director of the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs, Ms. Harti Holamaini, and her staff for their excellent work in preparing for this 67th COPUOS session. Mr. Chairman, Italy confirms its commitment to the guidelines on the long-term sustainability of outer space activities approved by consensus by this committee to ensure that space remains a safe and accessible domain for future generations. This includes ways to promote interregional, regional, and international cooperation. It's imperative that all nations work together to achieve these goals, leveraging the unique capabilities and perspectives of each country. In addition to the G7 activities mentioned by our ambassador, G20 is also involved in space issues with the dedicated space economy leader meetings attended by representatives of space agency with which the Italian Space Agency has always collaborated since its establishment. Last year, Indian Space Research Organization successfully organized the meeting in Bangalore, and some outcomes are still in progress. Outer space is a common resource, and it must remain free for exploration and use by all states without any discrimination, based on equality and in accordance with international law. We firmly promote the preservation for a safe, secure, and sustainable space environment for the peaceful use of outer space. And the upcoming UN Summit in the future in New York on next September 22-23 will provide, we are sure, a great opportunity to strengthen the role of COPUOS. Italy encourages the works in progress and the efforts to soon define a draft of the pact for the future. Mr. Chairman, Italy as a complete space ecosystem with players and capabilities is present in all space domains. Activities and programs are developed in Europe within the European Space Agency and European Union frameworks, but many projects are also developed in bilateral cooperation outside Europe. Each activity is based on principle of knowledge, utility, development, and cooperation. Mr. Chairman, the Artemis Accords represent a significant step forward for responsible space exploration, and their principles highlight the importance of transparency, interoperability, and peaceful use of outer space. And Italy is actively engaged as a space ambassador in promoting these principles. The Italian Space Agency, in collaboration with the International Astronautical Federation, launched the International Space Forum Initiative at a regional level in 2016 to promote the use of space technology and the involvement of new countries in space activities, facilitating and stimulating regional cooperation. This year, on the 2nd of July, the Italian Space Agency, the International Astronautical Federation, and the National Space Science Agency of the Kingdom of Bahrain will host the 6th edition of the International Space Forum in Manama for the Gulf countries and other invited Arab countries. In addition, within the framework of the collaboration between the Association of Southeast Asian Nations and Italy, the Italian Space Agency and the ASEAN Secretariat are jointly implementing a cooperation initiative on space and smart technology. And for this year's edition, ASI is leading the project together with the Singapore Office of Space Technology and Industry. Mr. Chairman, let me highlight finally that this October, Italy will host the 75th edition of the International Astronautical Congress 2024 in Milan. This event is organized by the International Astronautic Federation in collaboration with the local partners, including Italian Association on Aeronautics and Astronautics, the Italian Space Agency, and the Leonardo Company. This year, the Congress has a very important title, Responsible Space for Sustainability, a clear challenge to our collective efforts for the future of space. It's my pleasure to invite all of you, your delegation and your leaders, to attend to this very important event. Later, during the lunch break, the head of delegation are welcome to attend a side event organized by the Italian Parliament missions to UN in Vienna and sponsored by the Italian Space Agency in collaboration with the International Astronautic Federation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all of you for your kind attention.
I would like to thank the distinguished representative of Italy, and I could see that the Russian Federation raised the flag. Can you please clarify whether this is a right of reply or a point of order?
Point of order, Chair.
Point of order. Then you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much for giving me the floor. I would like to address you and the committee in order to address procedural matters. Allow me to repeat. I thank you, Chair. If you allow me, I would like to address the committee regarding the manner in which work has been carried out. I'd like to draw attention to the fact that despite the fact that it has been repeated, and despite what you yourself have said, Chair, delegations continue to address matters in their statements that have nothing to do with the actual agenda of our committee. And moreover, these delegations are exceeding the speaking time limit for their statement, which is a sign of a lack of respect. I would like to ask all delegations to respect the rules. If our European colleagues are of the view that they can act in any way they wish here within the committee, that is not the case. Once again, I wish to call them to order.
Thank you very much. Now we move to the next speaker on my list, the distinguished representative of Singapore. Please, you have the floor.
Chair, congratulations on your election as chair of this session. COPUOS is a vital platform to foster dialogue and international cooperation in the exploration and use of outer space for peaceful purposes. Singapore strongly supports discussions at COPUOS that address pertinent issues such as space debris, space traffic management, space resources utilization, and the implementation of the guidelines on the long-term sustainability of outer space activities. It is also critical that such discussions pay particular attention to the needs of developing states, many of whom rely on space applications to achieve their developmental goals, but whose space programs are often at a nascent stage or have not yet begun. Singapore strongly believes in equal access to the benefits of space for all states, not just a privileged few. In that regard, we thank UNUSA for supporting developing states through their capacity building initiatives. Singapore welcomes the focus on these issues in our common agenda and look forward to substantive outcomes in the Pact of the Future and during the Summit of the Future this September. Chair, Singapore's domestic space ecosystem continues to grow with a focus on developing space capabilities and applications to support critical domains such as aviation, maritime, and sustainability. We are also working to bring together industry and government through several initiatives. For example, earlier this year, the Office for Space Technology and Industry, Austin, hosted its inaugural Space Industry Sprint, which gathered key players from Singapore's satellite communications sector to review our collective progress and identify areas and opportunities for growth. Singapore is working to deepen our international space partnerships. In October last year, Austin co-chaired the inaugural US-Singapore Space Dialogue and convened the US-Singapore Commercial Space Roundtable. In the same month, Austin signed a Memorandum of Understanding with Luxembourg Space Agency and continued to enhance our cooperation with Thailand's Geoinformatics and Space Technology Development Agency, GISTA. More recently, we were pleased that the French Space Agency, CNES, and Singapore's Nanyang Technological University renewed research agreements that will promote deeper partnerships and mutually beneficial cooperation among the various parties. Austin is also working with the Italian Space Agency on the ASEAN-Italy Cooperation Initiative on Space and Smart Technologies, which will create long-term partnerships between the business and scientific communities between the space ecosystems in ASEAN and Italy. Singapore is also continuing to expand our international space engagements to connect with other spacefaring nations and the space industry, to learn from their experiences and best practices, and to expand our knowledge of the latest space policies and regulations. In the past year, Singapore has participated in the G20 Space Economy Leaders Meeting, the International Astronautical Congress, the Asia-Pacific Regional Space Agency Forum, Space Symposium, the ASEAN Subcommittee for Space Technology and Applications, Artemis Accords, and continued to host the 16th Global Space and Technology Convention in Singapore, just to name a few. Chair, Singapore remains firmly committed to the objectives and purpose of COPUOS and the space treaties we are party to. It is of critical importance for the global community to preserve space as a peaceful commons and to prevent an arms race in outer space. We remain steadfast in our support for the use of multilateral cooperative mechanisms at the UN and other regional and international fora to promote the peaceful, responsible and sustainable use of outer space by all. Thank you, Chair.
I would like to thank the distinguished representative of Singapore for his statement. And before proceeding to the next speaker, I'd just like to remind the member states and to ask them for cooperation and to proceed with the substantive items of the agenda, and also to make sure that their statements are fitting to the allocated time slots, which is 5 minutes for each statement. Now I'll proceed to the next speaker on my list, the distinguished representative of the United Kingdom. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First off, we would like to congratulate you on your appointment to the Chair of the Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space. We wish you every success. We'd also like to extend our thanks to Mr. Omran Sharaf and the United Arab Emirates for their excellent chairmanship of COPUOS. Chair, distinguished delegates, before the United Kingdom makes its general statement, let me first clearly state that space science and exploration missions and commercial activities rely on cooperation and collaboration between states. Russia's violation of Ukrainian sovereignty and its ongoing war against Ukraine has had a significant impact on this essential cooperation between spacefaring nations and is damaging international cooperation on the peaceful uses of outer space. We call again on Russia to end this war and withdraw from Ukrainian territory. Now, let me move on to our general statement. Space is an essential part of all of our lives. Space technology underpins key communications infrastructure, climate change observation, and global navigation. We have made excellent progress through COPUOS to advance the peaceful use and exploration of outer space, and the United Kingdom is proud to participate in this committee. The UK attaches great importance to the long-term sustainability of the outer space environment, and so we are pleased to have been able to fund important work with UNOOSA to raise global awareness on the importance of space sustainability and foster related capacity-building services for emerging spacefaring nations. We were pleased to begin Phase 4 of this project earlier this month with the first UK-funded training event on space situational awareness. We have also funded projects on the registration of space objects, promoting transparency and a better understanding of national registration practices. The UK would again like to thank UNOOSA for their support in these endeavours. In May, the UK government was pleased to publish our Space Regulatory Review. This report was developed collaboratively with the space, finance and insurance sectors, as well as independent regulators. The report focused on 3 core objectives: identifying regulatory gaps and opportunities, prioritising safety, security and sustainability, and maintaining UK leadership in modern space regulations. In March, we also published a space industrial plan that set out how to unlock growth in the UK space sector and develop resilient space capabilities. The plan set out 5 priority capability goals to address economic and geopolitical challenges. We were also pleased that the UK career astronaut Rosemary Coogan graduated in April. Her selection alongside the world's first astronaut with a disability, John McFall, and a reserve astronaut, Megan Christian, followed a record UK investment in the European Space Agency at the 2022 ESA Council of Ministers. As a founding member of the Artemis Accords, the UK would also like to take this opportunity to welcome all new signatories, which now stands at 43 countries and growing. We would like to thank Canada for recently hosting the 2nd workshop for the Artemis Accords. Our shared international vision facilitates sustainable human activity on the Moon and Mars and will enhance peaceful relationships between nations. We'd also like to thank and commend Canada for their funding of the Space for Women toolkit. This work is important in promoting equality in the space sector in national, regional and local contexts. Finally, we would like to thank you, Chair, and we extend our thanks to the UNOOSA Director, Arti Holla-Maini, and the Secretariat for all their work. We look forward to a continued productive session. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, distinguished representative of the United Kingdom. And now I invite the next speaker on my list, the distinguished representative of Japan, to give their statement. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, distinguished delegates, I would like to first of all express my dear congratulations for Dr. Sharif Mohammad Sedki on your election, and my sincere gratitude to former Chair, Mr. Omran Sharaf, for your outstanding work. I appreciate Ms. Arti Horamaini, the director of UNUSA, and her team for the preparation of this committee and its exceptional work. Mr. Chair, we've been seeing a rapid increase in the quality and quantity of space activities, both by states and private entities. This reminds us of the importance of the existing rules and normative frameworks and the need to develop such rules and norms further. COPUOS and its subcommittees have been playing a unique and vital roles in developing legally binding and non-binding instruments, and they must address emerging issues in a timely manner. The UN Summit for the Future in September this year will discuss such emerging issues. Japan reiterates the importance of the obligation of all state parties to comply with the Outer Space Treaty, including not to place in orbit around the Earth any objects carrying nuclear weapons or any other kinds of weapons of mass destruction. Full compliance with existing legal frameworks, including the Outer Space Treaty, is our common responsibility. Mr. Chair, ensuring sustainability in space activities is of utmost importance for all of us so that the current and the future generation can benefit from outer space. Space debris is a serious problem we face today. We strongly encourage efforts to develop further solutions for orbital debris mitigation and remediation. Japan has begun our efforts. Regarding the mitigation, the Space Activities Act of Japan stipulates space debris mitigation requirements. JAXA's space debris mitigation standards are also publicly available. On the remediation, Japan works hard on the technological development for active debris removal, ADR, with private entities. Japan established the national guidelines in 2021 to set out supplementary requirements for on-orbit operations, including ADR, for ensuring responsible and transparent operations. We encouraged other states to establish similar guidelines. In this regard, I would like to inform you that we will submit a non-paper to this session of COPUOS very soon and look forward to hearing the views of others. I would also like to invite you to our side event at 1 p.m. today and a technical presentation by Mr. Nobu Okada, CEO of Astroscale Holdings, in the morning of tomorrow, 21st of June. Mr. Chair, there is an urgent need to increase international cooperation and accelerate the applications of space assets in order to achieve the SDGs. There are some initiatives taken by Japan. The government of Japan has updated its basic plan on our space policy in order to pursue economic growth as well as to further promote cutting-edge science and technology. Japan will leverage its expertise to take part in international cooperation. In the field of space law, Japan has been actively promoting capacity-building efforts at the regional and UN level. Regionally, the National Space Registration Initiative under Asia-Pacific Regional Space Agency Forum facilitates the drafting and implementing national legislation and policies among the participating countries. At UN level, Japan has been a big supporter for the UNUSA's Space Law for New Space Actors project. This year, Japan works with Philippines and Thailand. In Earth Observing, the Earth Care was launched a joint mission with ESA was launched at the end of May. Earth Care will contributing to a better understanding for humankind of climate change by reducing uncertainties about the role of clouds and aerosols in heating and cooling of the Earth's atmosphere. Japan is committed to continue these endeavors. Space exploration is another field of international cooperation. First, Japan's lunar mission, the SLIM, achieved the first pinpoint landing in history in January this year. This technology will be utilized for our international endeavor. Second, Japan signed an implementing arrangement with the United States for human spaceflight cooperation on the moon last April. With these progresses, Japan hopes to contribute for Artemis program, among others, as now 43 countries have signed the Artemis Accord. In the context of the importance of international cooperation in outer space, Japan echoes the condemnation of Russia's aggression against Ukraine. This is a flagrant violation of international law, which is also the very foundation of international cooperation in the outer space activities. Mr. Chair, I'm confident that we will have a highly successful session of the COPUOS under your leadership. Thank you very much.
I would like to thank the distinguished representative of Japan for his statement, and now I invite the next speaker on my list, the distinguished representative of the United States, to give their statement. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The United States congratulates you on your election. As I look around the room today, I am struck by how a small committee with only 18 members in 1958 has grown to 102 member states, with 4 more joining this year. It is no coincidence that this growth correlates to humanity's growing use of outer space. In a matter of decades, we have progressed from Sputnik and Apollo to successful lunar landings from 4 different countries in the past year alone, and an international space telescope that is showing us the dawn of time. These feats not only push the bounds of humanity's knowledge and capability beyond our planet, but bring that knowledge right back to Earth to help our lives here and now. Every person in this room has used space assets to find their way home, has eaten food grown by space-enabled precision agriculture, and has seen the clear evidence from space data of the magnitude of the climate crisis we now face. Commercial satellites connected more than 71 million people to the internet last year, playing an essential role in bridging the digital divide. There are so many member states in this room today, not because outer space is interesting, although it is, but because it is vital. I'm also struck by the amount of cooperation within the members of this committee. We have deflected asteroids together. We have peered into the farthest reaches of space and time together. We have orbited the Earth at over 28,000 kilometers per hour together. We often hear people say space is hard, but working together, we have achieved what once seemed impossible. Cooperation is not a luxury in space, it is a necessity. And we need every country in this room, every actor in space, to understand that we're in this together. What we do here and now, how we treat the space environment, and how we explore other celestial bodies will affect all of us and future generations. This is why the work of UN COPUOS is becoming even more vital to the safe and sustainable use of outer space. Recent initiatives on space resource activities, information sharing, advancing the long-term sustainability of outer space, dark and quiet skies, and lunar consultation mechanisms are just a few of the many productive efforts of this committee and its subcommittees. It is more important than ever that we keep this committee functioning effectively and expend every effort to reach consensus to move forward as an international community. I would also like to use this opportunity to highlight some of the recent achievements that the United States, often in partnership with many in this room, have achieved since our last meeting. The successful crewed launch of the Starliner spacecraft to the International Space Station on June 5th marked another milestone in the advancement of human spaceflight and has set the United States and our international partners one step closer to our ambitious space exploration goals. Last September, the OSIRIS-REx capsule landed in the Utah desert after completing its 7-year, 3.7 billion-mile journey to gather material from the asteroid Bennu to better understand the origins of the universe. The spacecraft is not done, however. It's on its way to the asteroid Apophis to witness its nearly unprecedented close approach to Earth in 2029. Where Apophis will fly by our planet at a distance closer than some satellites that we have in orbit. NASA recently released its Space Sustainability Strategy, which will guide NASA's efforts to measure and assess space sustainability, identify cost-effective solutions, incentivize the adoption of sustainable practices, and enhance collaboration with the global space community. The United States Office of Space Commerce also debuted its vision for global space situational awareness coordination. This document details our approach to facilitating a global coordinated system of SSA providers that will provide consistent and reliable data to enable a safer and more sustainable orbital environment for all operators. I invite you to hear from the Director of the Office of Space Commerce, Richard Del Bello, at our side event on Friday, June 21st. We have seen the Artemis Accords continue to grow, both in the number of signatories, now 43, and in their impact. Our recent workshop in Montreal led to substantive discussions on non-interference, space object registration beyond low Earth orbit, and better information sharing. And we look forward to these efforts complementing and enhancing our work here at UN COPUOS. One of the most important principles of the Accords is the principle of transparency. Open data and open science have been a cornerstone of United States space activities, an embodiment of the NASA motto, for the benefit of all. The U.S. mission in Vienna, jointly with NASA and in collaboration with UN-USA, recently ran a competition to encourage people around the world to develop innovative visualizations of Earth observation data to advance the Sustainable Development Goals. I hope many of you will be able to attend our side event on Tuesday, June 25th, to see the winning teams present their amazing work. The United States thanks the Office of Outer Space Affairs and its director, Arti Halamaini, for its impressive work over the last year. Along with other examples of this work, we are grateful to UN-USA and the Government of Canada for hosting Space for Women expert meeting and developing a gender mainstreaming toolkit. Just as space exploration has benefited from an increasingly diverse set of actors, the space sector is stronger because of its diverse workforce. Chair, the future of space activities depends on respect for international law. Yet one member state continues to violate international law and threatens to undermine the core tenets of the Outer Space Treaty. Russia's unprovoked and unjustified invasion of Ukraine is a clear violation of the UN Charter. Russia also vetoed a UN Security Council resolution that would have reaffirmed long-standing, clear, and fundamental obligation of states parties under the Outer Space Treaty. While the mandate of UN COPUOS is to promote international cooperation, we cannot turn a blind eye to these threats to international law and long-term sustainability, stability, and peaceful uses of outer space. To that end, Chair, any affiliation between the United Nations and the proposed Regional Center for Space Science and Technology Education in the Russian Federation remains wholly inappropriate. In closing, while the number of obstacles and challenges we face may seem daunting at times, I am heartened to think of where we all started many decades ago and where we are now. New entrants in outer space bring new ideas, new perspectives, and new opportunities for cooperation. This committee has a massive responsibility before it as we discuss how to address issues ranging from the long-term sustainability of outer space to the utilization of space resources, and the decisions we make here will shape how we use outer space for generations to come. Thank you, Chair.
I would like to thank the distinguished representative of the United States for her statement. And now I move to the next speaker on the list, the distinguished representative of Bulgaria. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to begin by congratulating you on your election as the chair of the committee. I'd like to also convey my delegation's support to the director of the Office of Outer Space Affairs, Ms. Antti Halamaini, and the Secretariat for the assistance and excellent preparation of this session. You can rely on our full support. Bulgaria aligns itself with the statement made by the European Union under this agenda item. We reiterate our support for Ukraine and its territorial sovereignty, victim of aggressive war. COPUOS and its subcommittees continue to serve as an exceptional forum for global collaboration in the peaceful use in outer space and the formulation of international space norms, guidelines, and best practices. We consider the committee pivotal in promoting transparency and fostering trust. It is imperative that we ensure COPUOS remains effective in its mission. In this regard, the upcoming UN Summit on the Future presents a vital opportunity to bolster the role of UNOSA and COPUOS. We'd like to see the outer space issues relevant to COPUOS be prominently reflected in the draft Pact of the Future. Responsible behavior in outer space is essential for successful space collaboration. States must adhere to the rules of Outer Space Treaty, particularly those enshrined in Article 4, which obligates third parties not to place in orbit around the Earth any object carrying nuclear weapons or any other kinds of weapons of mass destruction. Install such weapons on celestial bodies or station such weapons in outer space in any other manner. We urge all states to faithfully implement their obligations under the existing UN treaties and the relevant UN Security Council resolutions. Chair, allow me to highlight some key elements of Bulgarian space policy. Bulgaria has a 50-year-long tradition in the field of space research and technology, which successfully gained new momentum in the recent years. Development of a competitive national space sector and strengthening the international cooperation, including accelerating Bulgaria's accession to the European Space Agency as an associate member, are our current major priorities. We have been working on setting those priorities in a national space policy strategy with the goal to be adopted by the end of this year. Our collaboration with the European Commission and the European Space Agency has brought important benefits in terms of strengthening our space technological and economical capacity and for implementing our ambition to increase the number of space entrepreneurs, new space companies and young people to benefit from the space program and be involved in our space ecosystem. Bulgaria has been actively participating in various initiatives and activities related to space exploration and peaceful use of space, among others, having the largest astronomical observatory in southeastern Europe, the National Astronomical Observatory Rosen. That was one of the reasons to fully support initiatives like Dark and Quiet Skies, and we have welcomed its inclusion as a single item in the agenda of the next 5 sessions of the Scientific and Technological Committees. In the recent years, Bulgaria has been implementing successfully space projects in important areas such as production of space food and construction of space greenhouses, an informational system for monitoring of hydropower reservoirs, development of communication satellite terminals, software platforms for aggregation of data and data analysis from satellite, non-satellite feeding systems, terrestrial surveillance of agricultural and forest areas, and many others. We are also very proud that one of the 9 new space companies selected to join the Copernicus program as Copernicus contribution mission is a Bulgarian company. Since the last COPUOS session, Bulgaria has undertaken a significant step in the international cooperation by joining the Artemis Accord set of principles in November 2023. Last but not least, Bulgaria expresses its support for Romania's proposal for the establishment of an action team to explore the possibilities of establishing an international consultative mechanism on lunar activities within the framework of COPUOS. We believe that such an initiative will promote international partnerships as well as contribute to the development of safe, sustainable and transparent lunar activities for peaceful purposes. We look forward to substantial discussions in the upcoming days. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for the distinguished representative of Bulgaria. And now I move to the next speaker on my list, the distinguished representative of Ecuador. Please, you have the floor.
Buenos días. Good morning, Chair. Ecuador would like to congratulate you on your election, as well as congratulate the other members of the Bureau and express its willingness to contribute to the work of the 67th session of the committee. We would also like to express our thanks to the Director of UN-USA, Arti Holamaini, and to the Secretariat for organizing this meeting, which will deal with substantive aspects of space for peaceful purposes. Ecuador supports the statement made by the chair of G77 and China. Chair, Ecuador reiterates the relevance of the peaceful use of outer space. This is a shared resource for the whole of humanity. Discoveries from space exploration and research mean we can enlarge our knowledge of the universe and its interaction with human beings. Therefore, we must protect and preserve space for future generations. The peaceful use of outer space is essential in order to achieve scientific and technological progress, as well as to maintain international peace and security. Space should not be a scenario of conflicts, but rather a place for cooperation and mutual understanding. Therefore, there is a pressing need to guarantee that space will be used for the benefit of all. The results of research so far reveal the enormous potential of outer space to improve life on Earth. The technology stemming from this is an invaluable tool for scientific research, which would not be possible otherwise. The use of space technology for Earth observation through satellites provides vital data on the climate, the environment, agriculture, and other applications to improve the quality of life on our planet. But we do need a legal and regulatory framework at international level to guarantee equity and transparency. Chair, under the premise of the rule of law, the geostationary orbit is a physical fact linked to our planet. 70% of this orbit is above the oceans, whilst the remaining 30% is above countries on the equator, such as my country. That characteristic means that geostationary orbit is a finite natural resource, and therefore segments of it are part of the territory upon which we exercise our sovereignty. In this framework, Ecuador has the rights over the segments of synchronous geostationary orbit located in its territory. However, that does not imply a monopoly or an exclusive right on those segments. Quite the opposite. Its use should be governed by principles of cooperation and peaceful use, ensuring that it is used in cooperation with other states on the equator and for the benefit of all of humanity. This fact means that we must work on the definition and delimitation of outer space and the geostationary orbit, establishing limits to the capacity and use of satellites whilst respecting the rights of states along the equator. In this regard, Ecuador adheres to international treaties that regulate activities in outer space. Ecuador, with regards to the supremacy of law in international relations, believes that legality creates a safe and sustainable environment for space activities. Therefore, my country has launched the process of joining the Convention on the Registry of Objects Launched into Outer Space. Chair, finally, a subject of great importance is gender balance. The Space for Women program is a project which facilitates access to the benefits of space exploration, space science, technology, and education in degrees of science, technology, engineering, mathematics, STEM for women and girls, promoting gender equality in line with the Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the distinguished representative of Ecuador. Now I'm moving to the next speaker on my list, the distinguished representative of Norway. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Norway wishes to congratulate you on your election as Chair. Please rest assured of Norway's support. We would also like to thank the outgoing Chair for his outstanding work in leading the committee during the last period. As always, we also thank the Office for Outer Space Affairs for the excellent work in preparing this session. This committee and its two subcommittees constitute the primary forum to develop norms and guidelines for the exploration and peaceful uses of outer space. Given the immense rate of growth and development in the space domain, it is vital that COPUOS remain proactive and focused. In order to stay relevant, it must strive to obtain consensus on the many pressing issues on its agenda. The rapid development in the space domain also calls for close interaction and coordination between the two subcommittees to promote the development of norms and guidelines for the exploration and peaceful uses of outer space in an efficient manner. COPUOS should also be mindful of the relations between its work and that of the First Committee of the General Assembly. The efforts should remain distinct but complementary. Norway also welcomes the new UNOSA leadership strategy and its key priorities. Norway is currently considering how best to cooperate with UNOSA and contribute to this strategy. Chair, among Norway's priorities are contributing to the Working Group on Legal Aspects of Space Resource Activities, the Working Group on Long-Term Sustainability, Space as an Asset to Combat Climate Change, the Space 2030 Agenda, and the upcoming Summit of the Future. On space resources, we look forward to discussing an initial draft of recommended principles for space resource activities next year. We would also like to thank Belgium and Luxembourg for co-hosting the expert meeting in March, collecting preliminary inputs for consideration at the international conference that was held in Vienna. On long-term sustainability, Norway hopes consensus can be reached on the basis of the Chair's non-paper distributed after the informal meeting of the Working Group in May. On space traffic management, it is more relevant than ever to preserve the space environment and ensure safe operations. It is also a topic of global nature. Norway supports the suggestion made by Germany at the legal subcommittee to establish a study group of experts to come up with a proposal on how to move forward on space traffic management. Allow me also to present an update on some of the latest developments on Norway's space activities. On 2nd November last year, Andøya Spaceport was officially opened. Given its location far north on our coastline, the spaceport will offer launches to polar orbits. The first launch is planned for later this year. The Arctic Satellite Broadband Mission is a partnership between Space Norway, the Norwegian Armed Forces, Inmarsat, and the US Space Force. It consists of 2 satellites and is scheduled to be launched next month. The mission will provide broadband coverage in the Arctic north of the 65th latitude. The Norwegian Civil Aviation Authority is the designated national space authority in Norway starting this year. Its responsibility to supervise space activities has been extended to include payloads launched from Norwegian territory, as well as maintaining the national register of objects launched into outer space. Norway has, from the beginning of this year, established a civil responsibility for space surveillance and tracking and space traffic management at the Norwegian Space Center. This arrangement will be evaluated after a 3-year period. The arrangement entails ensuring that national needs are met within space surveillance and tracking and space traffic management, as well as handling of warnings nationally, including in emergency response settings. Moreover, the Norwegian Space Agency hosted the International Space University's Executive Space Course in May this year. Chair, in a forum such as this, we do well to remind ourselves of the importance of upholding our commitments under international law. Norway condemns Russia's illegal, full-scale war against Ukraine and calls for Russia to cease hostilities and unconditionally withdraw all its forces and military equipment from within Ukraine's internationally recognized borders. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for the distinguished representative of Norway. Now I invite the next speaker on my list, the distinguished representative of Burkina Faso. Please, you have the floor.
Monsieur le Président. Chair, the delegation of Burkina Faso would like to congratulate you on your election to chair the 67th session. We would also like to express our gratitude to your predecessor, Mr. Omran Sharaf, for his leadership and commitment. We would also like to express our recognition to Ms. Ad Holomaini, Director of the UN Office for Space Affairs, and to the Secretariat for preparing this meeting. Burkina Faso aligns itself with the statement made by G77 and China. Chair, Burkina Faso attaches great importance to the work of the committee to reinforce international cooperation and the advantages of the peaceful use of outer space for all countries. In this regard, Burkina Faso has implemented programs and projects to promote the use of space technologies and to wisely use the benefits. This includes the support program for communication infrastructures, PARICOM, to improve the effectiveness of public administration and to provide benefits to the population and in the infrastructure sector. Our country has also implemented a geospatial management and information system for land management transactions thanks to satellite positioning, the Global Navigation Satellite System, continuously operating reference station. This program continues to provide specific mapping solutions which are reliable and guarantee land transactions, thus contributing to the socio-economic development of our country. With regards to climate change, we have a project to strengthen climate information and early warning systems in Africa for the development and resilience and adaptation to climate change in Burkina Faso. This is called the SAP-IC. At institutional level, we have implemented a 3-year program, 2024 to 2028, taking into account geospatial information management and food security and the resilience of ecosystems in West Africa. In scientific terms, Burkina Faso in 2019 launched its space project, Burkina Sat-1. This is a satellite designed by our experts, and it will improve cultural practices through information on rain quality, on soil quality, and to stop desertization and to help mining prospection and underground water resources. In terms of health, the satellite will help control air and soil quality and combat respiratory diseases. Those are some of the programs and projects we have implemented and which could be important for developing countries. In terms of international scientific cooperation, Burkina Faso is pleased to share space and moon data, which is one of the strategic goals of UN-USA. Access to these data gives many advantages to developing countries because it helps them change several key factors and foster sustainable development. To conclude, Chair, we would like to benefit from the accompaniment of all this information sharing, and we hope that this will foster international cooperation and facilitate better integration of our countries in the global economy. Thank you.
I would like to thank the distinguished representative of Burkina Faso. And now I'm inviting the distinguished representative of the Kingdom of the Netherlands to give their statement. Please, you have the floor.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, please allow me first to thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the Office for Outer Space Affairs for the preparation of this meeting of the UN COPUOS Main Committee. Furthermore, we would like to congratulate you with your election. We are fully aligned with the statement made by the European Union and would like to make the following remarks in our national capacity to highlight a few developments in the Netherlands and to reaffirm our priorities. Whether on Earth or in outer space, the Netherlands is committed to the international rule of law. Hence, the Netherlands is signatory to all 5 UN treaties related to outer space. And accordingly, the Netherlands has established the Dutch Space Act. The number of space activities in the Netherlands is growing structurally, resulting in an increase in the number of Dutch space operators and satellites under Dutch jurisdiction and control. This year, there are 4 licensees under the Dutch Space Act, which operate 22 Dutch satellites, 10 geostationary and 12 low Earth orbit satellites. Based on several recent developments, we believe the number of satellites under Dutch jurisdiction will increase significantly over the coming years. In light of this, we advocate for a robust, normative and legal international framework for sustainable, safe and secure use of space. With this in mind, the Netherlands stands ready to update its own National Space Act, taking into account the changing space environment. We will also align our national legal framework with the UN long-term sustainability guidelines. Ultimately, we need to foster sustainable space activities by providing our stakeholders a clear legal framework. Mr. Chairman, as outer space becomes increasingly more congested, there's a need for reliable and sustainable space traffic management. Our economy, societies and security depends more than ever on space infrastructure. And yet, our current regime of space traffic management is inadequate and unsustainable. The Netherlands is convinced that the international community must strive towards a legally binding instrument for space traffic management, negotiated here within the framework of the UN. We need governments that enable safe and sustainable space travel while providing a global level playing field. Moreover, in developing strategies and adequate regulatory frameworks, we need to include private and public stakeholders. Not only because the space sector is a global market, but because technologies advance rapidly, implicating that we should adopt a technology-open approach as much as possible. The Netherlands supports the use of satellite data for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. For example, the Netherlands has been investing in geodata for agriculture and water program for 10 years. The program promotes and supports private investment for large-scale, demand-driven and satellite-based information services targeted at actors in the food production chain. It has performed beyond expectations, and the number of users and beneficiaries is still growing, like in the Geo Potato project in Bangladesh, an SMS-based service that timely warns potato farmers so they can use crop protection products at the right moment and so reduce environmental impact. However, more public investment is needed in order to further scale up existing information services that help smallholders increase their productivity in an environmentally sustainable manner and to ensure an efficient use of water. The Netherlands works closely with the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN in providing data on water productivity and agriculture. Whether in outer space or on Earth, there's an urgent need for the establishment of a comprehensive legal regime governing space resource activities. As previously highlighted during the legal subcommittee, the issue holds significant importance for our government. The Moon Agreement, unique among the 5 UN space treaties, foresaw the potential for space resources activities and anticipated that effective regulation would be essential to prevent conflicts. Only with adequate regulation can the exploration, exploitation and utilization of space resources occur without discrimination and in accordance with international law. As a state party to the Moon Agreement, the Netherlands is particularly committed to the creation of an international regime, including appropriate procedures to govern the exploitation of space resources initially and possibly their utilization at a later stage. This commitment is reinforced by our participation as a signatory to the Artemis Accords, reflecting our dedication to a cooperative and constructive regulation of space resource activities. Furthermore, we continue to underscore the significance of the building blocks of the Hague International Space Resources Governance Working Group, which provides a comprehensive framework outlining the necessary elements for the robust regulation of space resources activities. As space is now an indispensable part in our daily lives, and for the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, the global community needs clear rules and a forum where dialogue is possible to develop a global consensus. Looking ahead, the Netherlands stands ready to play its role in space for the years to come, supported by a comprehensive national long-term space agenda. Lastly, we believe COPUOS and UNOSA should continue to play an important role in this context, and we will continue to support the activities in this arena. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, and I would like to invite the next speaker on my list, the distinguished representative of Portugal. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. At this time, since this is the first time my delegation is taking the floor in this session, I would like to congratulate you, Professor Sharif Mohammed Sidki, on your election as Chair of the Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, COPUOS, and assure you and your Vice Chairs of our full support and cooperation. I would also like to praise UNOSA's Director General, Tir Ola Maini, for her leadership, which we continue to strongly support and closely cooperate with. A word of gratitude is due also to the Secretariat for its excellent support, work in supporting this meeting and the ongoing works of COPUOS and these subcommittees. Allow me also to express our appreciation to the outgoing chair, Mr. Omran Sharaf, for his steady and skillful guidance over the past 2 years, and also the outgoing Vice Chair, Ms. Carolina Rego da Costa, for the support she provided during the last session. Chairman, Portugal aligns itself with the statement delivered earlier by the distinguished representative of the European Union, which we fully support in all its extension, including on the strong condemnation of those fundamental violations of the United Nations Charter that undermine the entire United Nations system. Chairman, allow me now to add some additional points on our national capacity. COPUOS of these subcommittees are unique frameworks of international cooperation and peaceful uses of outer space in the development of international space law, guidelines, best practices, and other transparency and confidence-building measures regulating space activities. After long preparation, the Summit of the Future will take place in September this year in New York, and the event will be of paramount importance to strengthen and reinforce the role of UNOSA and COPUOS. It has been already recognized by the United Nations Secretary General in his report, Our Common Agenda, the extreme relevance of this committee, and we are certain that the Pact of the Future will also underline its importance in outer space activities. Portugal has been actively contributing to the outer space dialogue. As announced during the 65th COPUOS, together with UNOSA, we organized and hosted a conference on management and sustainability of outer space activities in Lisbon, the 14th and 15th of May, to discuss the topics outlined in Policy Brief 7, namely space traffic management, space resources, and space debris. A report on the conference has been released as A/AC.105/1315, similarly to what has been done regarding the technical and policy preparatory symposia with the STSC and the legal subcommittee, namely through a joint side event in February, a briefing session and a non-paper in April, and conference room papers number 34 and 33 respectively. In the meantime, Portugal has conveyed to this committee and subcommittees all the procedural information, the discussions contents and the conclusions reached, aiming thus to ensure a truly transparent, open and multi-stakeholder process. As a result of this process, and thanks to the contribution of so many, Portugal prepared the Lisbon Declaration on Outer Space that was presented at the conference and that will be presented next week to this committee in the conference room paper. All the sessions are also accessible at the conference website unportugal.pt/space.pt. We would like to express our appreciation for the useful comments and kind support expressed by several member states regarding the organization and preparatory symposia and of the Lisbon Conference and the Lisbon Declaration for Outer Space. Member states that wish to do so, and we encourage them to do so, can still co-sponsor the resolution regarding the declaration until tomorrow, before we officially submit it. One latter, the transversal topic, was the need for states to come together in common grounds at a faster pace. This consideration has implications not only on the safety aspect of outer space, but also on the ways this committee functions and operates. A clear message on the need of modernization and adequacy was sent, and we believe it should be heard. Portugal supports the mandate, terms of reference and methods of work for an action team on lunar activities consultation, ATLAC, as per the paper submitted by Romania and the Republic of Korea, welcomes the proposal of Germany regarding a study group on perspectives for space traffic management and looks forward to its development. Finally, Portugal continues to implement its international space strategy and has launched in March its second satellite into space, Aeros AIM-H-1. Next month, in the inaugural flight of Ariane 6, another satellite will be launched, this one being a CubeSat designed and built by a national university. We reaffirm Portugal's full commitment towards COPUOS and its subcommittees, aiming at a fruitful cooperation for a peaceful and sustainable use of outer space, and we recognize the important role of UNOSA in supporting this work. Thank you, Chair.
I would like to thank the distinguished representative of Portugal. We'll continue now our consideration of Agenda Item 5, General Exchange of Views, this afternoon. Distinguished delegates, I would now like to continue and hopefully conclude our consideration of Agenda Item 6, Ways and Means of Maintaining Outer Space for Peaceful Purposes. The first speaker on my list is the distinguished representative of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. Please, you have the floor. I see the Russian Federation is raising the flag. Is this the right of reply or point of order? Right of reply. Okay. Then we.
Right of reply on what item?
Is it related to Item 5? So we take it now.
Я благодарю вас, уважаемый господин.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, since the beginning of our consideration of Item 5, we have requested the floor to make a right of reply, but we have equally taken the floor in order to make a point of order. There appears to be some confusion. We have requested the floor twice. Apologies for that confusion. If you would allow me, then, I would now like to proceed to deliver a right of reply, which indeed we had requested to make from the very beginning of the meeting. This is a right of reply in response to what was said by the delegation of the United Kingdom. In their statement, they called upon the Russian Federation to end the war. Allow me to recall that it is in fact the United Kingdom itself which expressed itself more vigorously than any of the other European representatives, calling upon the Kiev representatives to continue the armed conflict with the Russian Federation. Even while knowing that defeat is inevitable for Ukraine, quite clearly. This is an attempt to continue the conflict until the last drop of blood is shed. It is the leaders of the United Kingdom, it is their government who are actively providing Ukraine with various types of weaponry, including high-accuracy weaponry, making it possible to carry out strikes in territory of the Russian Federation. It is the United Kingdom that is preparing, that is training members of the Ukrainian armed forces. It is the United Kingdom which is abetting the perpetration of terrorist attacks in territory of the Russian Federation in order to target civilian infrastructure. And today the representatives of this state call upon us to return to peace. A few days ago, the President of the Russian Federation made quite clear, clarifying the matters to be addressed in the context of peace negotiations. If you truly wish to make peace, then it is up to the Kiev authorities to sit down at the negotiating table. But why are we addressing these politicized matters here within COPUOS, which is, after all, a technical body, a body with a very specific mandate? In your statement, you said that the United Kingdom was proud of participating in the committee's work. But if you continue to politicize our debates, well, indeed, that pride is likely to become a source of shame. Please consider. And now allow me to respond to what was said by our colleague, the delegation of the United States. In their statement, she addressed two matters. Firstly, recalling the Security Council resolution on the prohibition of the placement of nuclear weapons in outer space. The United States is the sponsor of that resolution. Well, then why, yesterday, where we address this matter in detail, but if you like, we can continue this discussion, you know full well that the Russian Federation is an acknowledged leader when it comes to the development of nuclear energy sources for spacecraft. And it seems to me that in the near future, it will be possible even to manufacture nuclear reactors to enable sustainable functioning of the space station, including on the moon or on other celestial bodies. Even the development of new space devices, spacecrafts, which will be able to use nuclear energy sources, nuclear power sources. And you know that full well. Moreover, we have long-standing excellent cooperation with the United States in the form of a COPUOS working group on nuclear power sources. It seems to us that this resolution was aimed chiefly at tarnishing the Russian space sector. That is not exactly good faith competition on the part of the United States in the space sector. And equally in your statement, you said that the Russian Federation and its activities represent a threat, are a threat in outer space. It's very interesting to hear that said by a state which has adopted a whole set of doctrine regarding space and which has staged this as a theater of its operations and is in fact the most active worldwide when it comes to preparing for the militarization of outer space. So undoubtedly the threat comes from you to the international community, but you are trying to put things in a different light. A further dangerous tendency deriving from your actions is the use of space civilian infrastructure, including commercial satellites, in order to interfere in the domestic affairs of other states, and worse still, in order to participate in an armed conflict, as we can see quite clearly in Ukraine. In so doing, commercial infrastructure become legitimate targets for military reprisals. And this isn't because the Russian Federation is a space actor, a responsible actor. We are aware of the consequences that all of this has for the international community. But you yourselves, are you aware of these consequences as you continue to conduct yourselves in this manner? Thank you for your attention.
I would like to thank the Russian Federation, and I would also, I could see here, that's the United States, or the United States?
United Kingdom.
Yeah, okay.
United Kingdom.
United Kingdom, okay. That's a right of reply? Yeah, okay. Then you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We regret that we have to take the floor in the form of a right of reply. It was disappointing to hear this response from the Russian Federation. We continue to believe that the illegal war in Ukraine has a substantive impact on our discussions here, and it is the sovereign right of every member state to express their views. We do not appreciate efforts to silence any member states in this way. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for the distinguished representative of the United Kingdom. And again, I would like to appeal to all states that we focus on our substantial agenda items. We have a very busy schedule, and I thank you for your cooperation and consideration. I could see that the Russian Republic is asking the floor. It's a right of reply? Yeah, please.
Thank you, Chair. I know that this is the last time when I can take the floor to exercise a right of reply at this current session in our consideration of Agenda Item 5. I do, however, have the right to make 2 rights of reply, which is what I'm currently doing. I'll be brief. I am astounded that a large number of Western delegations continue to emphasize the need to have a discussion of the armed conflict in Ukraine here in COPUOS. This is a matter which is related to the preservation of sovereignty and territorial integrity of the Ukraine. Colleagues, I really have the feeling that you are in the wrong room. Perhaps you need to leave this room and go elsewhere, because here we have the Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space. Have a look at the agenda, have a look at the mandate, as you can see, derived from the relevant General Assembly resolution, in order to restore balance to our work here. Thank you.
Thank the representative of the Russian Federation. And now we move forward with the agenda item 6. And I would like to invite the distinguished representative of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela to give their statement. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, for a number of delegations, the function of COPUOS is to promote international cooperation in space. And it is clear that cooperation is the only mechanism to preserve outer space for peaceful purposes. On that basis, therefore, we should consider General Assembly Resolution 1472, which, as is well known, establishes COPUOS and requests COPUOS to examine the sphere of international cooperation and to study practical ways and means to implement programs for the peaceful uses of outer space that can be undertaken under the auspices of the United Nations. As such, COPUOS has the mandate to promote international cooperation in space, addressing scientific, technical, and legal aspects, based on outer space law and in particular on the general principles that govern this, which are of the utmost importance and which have become a robust instrument for international cooperation, which have served to promote ties of peace and the development of new technologies. Chair, this obliges us to make necessary modifications and changes in keeping with the reality at hand, despite the fact that space law is considered a component of obligatory norms and standards. Our delegation is of the view that there is still a lack of legal certainty and that therefore it is necessary to promote the binding nature as part of the progressive development of these norms. In the same vein, preserving peaceful activities in outer space is a priority, and therefore applying the principle of peaceful use is reflected in the use of outer space as the common heritage of humankind. It is the member states who indicate the road to follow. In particular, we would draw attention to the matter at hand, which is the ways and means of maintaining outer space for people purposes. This provides us with a broad overview of technical, legal, and political actions that can be undertaken. As is well known, the applicable legal regime to outer space does not in itself guarantee our ability to prevent an arms race in outer space. Preservation of outer space in light of exploitation of resources, which is why we recall the need to adopt appropriate, effective, and binding measures that will make it possible to preserve outer space. The lack of clear definitions and the absence of regulation in certain matters do not allow us to maintain the peaceful nature of outer space. Chair, it is therefore necessary that we promote an international body of law on outer space which effectively addresses the problems that derive from space activities and where we have a clear and absolute prohibition of the use of any type of arms in outer space, as well as the exploitation of resources in outer space, in the absence of a legislative framework which enjoys international legitimacy. That is why it is COPUOS's duty to suggest and to recommend peaceful guidelines in this and in other areas too. On that basis, it would be useful to cooperate with other bodies and mechanisms of the United Nations system in order to meet the objective of preserving outer space for peaceful purposes, and in so doing to achieve the best possible success in this common undertaking. Thank you very much.
I would like to thank the distinguished representative of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. And now I move to the next speaker on my list, the distinguished representative of the United States. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, in the years since this committee last addressed this topic, there have been a number of significant and troubling developments with regard to the peaceful uses of outer space. Today, the system of international laws and norms that has enabled humanity to explore and use outer space for the past 6 decades faces new challenges. This is why the United States has urged the international community to take stock of the current and emerging threats and, more importantly, commit to addressing them. With regard to these threats, the United States is extremely concerned that one member state may be considering the incorporation of nuclear weapons, I repeat, weapons, into its counter space programs. If placed in orbit, this capability would violate the Outer Space Treaty, the cornerstone of international law in outer space and the most celebrated achievement of this committee. In April, this same member state vetoed a United Nations Security Council resolution that reaffirmed the long-standing, clear, and fundamental obligation of states parties under the Outer Space Treaty to, quote, not place in orbit around the Earth any objects containing nuclear weapons or any other kinds of weapons of mass destructions, unquote, in accordance with Article 4 of the treaty. As we heard yesterday, the head of this nation's delegations to this committee stated that his country has no intention of placing nuclear weapons, I repeat, weapons, in space. If that were the case, this nation would not have vetoed the Security Council resolution and would not be pursuing such a capability. The mandate of this committee is to promote international cooperation in the peaceful uses of outer space. However, we here in Vienna cannot turn a blind eye to this severe challenge to international law and the sustainability, safety, stability, and security of the outer space domain. We firmly reject the mischaracterization that many delegations have made about their concerns as a mischaracterization that this is some sort of trick or prank. This is about states parties abiding to their international obligations. Chair, in the face of such challenges, one of the keys to maintaining outer space for peaceful purposes depends on respect for international law. We call on all states parties to the Outer Space Treaty of 1967 to commit to upholding their international obligations under this treaty. We also encourage all members of this committee, as well as all other UN member states, to become parties to the Outer Space Treaty, to accede to it, as well as to implement its provisions. On this foundation, there remains a strong global consensus in this committee and the broader UN system. Chair, the United States recognizes that there are distinct and complementary efforts in this committee and UN disarmament fora, including the Conference on Disarmament, the Disarmament Commission, and the First Committee of the General Assembly. These mandates do not prejudice the specific and distinct role of the Security Council regarding the maintenance of international peace and security in outer space. The United States will continue to raise space security concerns in these disarmament and international security fora, as they are the best suited venues to address such threats. Chair, we also acknowledge the distinct mandates of elements in the UN system. As we acknowledge those, the United States again notes that some committee efforts, such as guidelines for orbital debris mitigation and long-term sustainability of outer space activities, complement and contribute to enhancing outer space security and stability. Similarly, we note that several efforts in disarmament and security fora complement the efforts within this committee. These include General Assembly Resolution 7744, which calls on all states to commit not to conduct destructive direct ascent anti-satellite tests. I am pleased to say that a total of 38 states have now made national commitments to avoid this intentional and irresponsible hazard to spaceflight safety. We also note General Assembly Resolution 7820, which establishes a second open-ended working group, or OEWG, on reducing space threats through norms, rules, and principles of responsible behavior. Chair, the United States urges all members of COPUOS to participate constructively in the second OEWG when it convenes next year in Vienna. As a large group of participating states at the first OEWG noted last year, this forum has proven itself and supported the continuation of a norms-based approach. We also note that the second OEWG mandate allows for states to address, quote, other activities and measures that could reduce the risk of unintended escalation and conflict, unquote. This could serve as a more appropriate forum for substantive discussions on issues related to the national security use of space, of non-governmental space capabilities, which some delegations have raised this year in the committee. Chair, underscoring the importance of both complementary discussions and these fora and other developments, the United States also looks forward to a constructive set of discussions on the outcomes of the Summit of the Future this September, as well as the 5th joint panel discussion on the General Assembly's 1st and 4th committees on possible challenges to space security and sustainability in October. The remainder of our views will be provided in our prepared statement. Thank you.
I would like to thank the distinguished representative of the United States for his statement, and then I will move to the distinguished representative of China to give their statement. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chair, China welcomes the continued discussion of the item, ways and means to maintain outer space for peaceful purposes. Maintaining outer space for peaceful purposes is an important responsibility of COPUOS, which serves the common interests of all countries. The international community should work together to maintain outer space for peaceful purposes. First, the Outer Space Treaty should be fully and accurately understood and implemented. The OST establishes the goal of outer space for peaceful purposes only, and specifically prohibits the deployment of nuclear weapons and other weapons of mass destruction in outer space. As the cornerstone of the international space law, the Outer Space Treaty as a legal system should universally apply to and constrain all types of outer space activities and the subjects of outer space activities. Placing weapons in outer space and building military alliances in outer space are obviously inconsistent with the goals and the purposes of the OST. For many years, resolutions have been adopted by a large majority in the General Assembly, calling on member states to take measures to prevent the placement of weapons in outer space and to negotiate and conclude legally binding multilateral agreements as soon as possible, echoing the common call of the international community for implementing the goals and the purposes of the OST. China would like to point out that the draft treaty on the prevention of the placement of weapons in outer space, the threat or use of force against outer space objects, jointly proposed by China and Russia, has found an effective and feasible international legal avenue for preventing an arms race in outer space and ensuring that outer space is used for peaceful purposes, which is conducive to achieving the OST objectives and purposes. Second, strengthening international cooperation, enhancing mutual trust, and sharing space benefits. On the one hand, we should strengthen information sharing, communication, and coordination in outer space activities, enhancing mutual understanding and trust, and promote safety and sustainable development of outer space activities. On the other hand, we should continue to promote the progress of space technology and space applications through capacity building, technology transfer, and data sharing so as to benefit all mankind and create a safe environment through development. Third, we should adhere to multilateralism and support COPUOS' role as the main platform for peaceful use of outer space. Although COPUOS does not directly deal with space militarization and arms race, it regulates the development of outer space activities by examining issues such as long-term sustainability of space activities and space traffic management, and provides important guarantees for maintaining peace and security in outer space. At present, COPUOS can focus on challenges brought about by the development of commercial space activities, urge countries to fulfill their national regulatory responsibilities, and ensure that private sector space activities are in line with peaceful purposes. At the same time, we should continue to pay attention to the safety of space activities, strengthen research on space safety risks caused by low orbit, mega satellite constellations, and close encounters, and seek solutions. China hopes that COPUOS and its member states will always bear in mind the important purpose of maintaining outer space for peaceful uses, and continue to work with other platforms to promote the efforts to prevent militarization of outer space and arms race there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I would like to thank the distinguished representative of China for his statement. And before moving to the next speaker on my list, I just note the request of the Russian Federation for the right of reply, which will be granted by the end of this meeting. Now, I will move to the next speaker on my list, the distinguished representative of India. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Chair and distinguished delegates, India is a firm advocate for the adoption of the UN principles that govern peaceful uses of outer space. As a party to all major international space treaties and regulations, India is committed to promoting responsible space operations. Mr. Chair, the emerging space capabilities are rapidly transforming the outer space environment. Currently, the number of space objects shows a steeply growing trend. Therefore, augmenting space situational awareness capabilities commensurate with this tremendous growth is essential to operate the space assets safe and sustainably. In addition, it is also required to assess carefully the long-term benefits and risks of space activities through relevant technical and scientific studies. India recognizes the importance of transparency and confidence-building measures to eliminate any misinterpretations of intents while operating in an increasingly congested outer space. Voluntary exchange of data, tools, knowledge base, best practices, and experiences are some of the recommended measures that promote global space situational awareness capabilities and aid sustainable space operations for peaceful uses of outer space. Mr. Chair, India continues its effort to build space object observational capabilities and aims to further enhancements through relevant data sharing and collaborations. In all Indian space missions, the space debris mitigation guidelines, as recommended by the UN COPUOS and IADC, are followed to the maximum extent practicable. Proactive measures are undertaken to improve compliance, such as deorbiting of the upper stages of the rocket bodies at the end of the mission. ISRO's PSLV Orbiter Experimental Module, POEM, is yet another innovative approach to contain debris growth. By hosting multiple payloads for technology demonstrations, it eliminates the need for flying independent small platforms. The third POEM mission on board PSLV C-58 was deorbited from the 650-kilometer to 350-kilometer orbit, facilitating its early re-entry, and was passivated to remove residual propellants to minimize any accidental breakups. POEM 3 thus demonstrates a practically zero debris mission. Prior to that, India also undertook measures towards effecting the uncontrolled atmospheric re-entry of the Cartosat-2 satellite, which was earlier expected to take about 30 years to naturally deorbit. This was done by lowering the spacecraft's perigee using leftover fuel to comply with the international guidelines on space debris mitigations, thus reducing collision risks and ensuring safety of end-of-life disposal. The spacecraft re-entered the Indian Ocean on February 14, 2024, meeting its demise during atmospheric re-entry. India's intent to achieve the debris-free space missions by all Indian space actors, government and non-government, and entities by 2030 was announced in the annual meet of IADC held in Bengaluru in April 2024. India also invites all other state space actors to join this initiative. India recognizes the crucial role of UN guidelines for the long-term sustainability of the outer space activities in promoting sustainable use of outer space for peaceful purposes. India actively participates in the activities of the international bodies working in the domains of space debris mitigations and remediations. Space situational awareness, space traffic management and sustainability, including in the working group of the LTS of outer space activities. India had also provided inputs on the challenges to the long-term sustainability of the outer space activities that arise in the context of safety of spaceflight, especially while operating in the presence of large constellations and small satellites. The Indian Space Policy 2023 addresses the overarching requirements of ensuring safe and sustainable space operations through a dedicated framework in alignment with the relevant international guidelines. In this policy, the required awareness-raising programs and hand-holding exercises are undertaken to ensure adherence to safe and sustainable space operations. Mr. Chair, India believes that concerted efforts by fostering international collaborations are essential to ensure peaceful utilization and exploration of outer space for the collective benefit of the humankind. India remains committed to playing an active and constructive role in this regard. Thank you, Mr. Chair and distinguished delegates, for your kind attention.
I would like to thank the distinguished delegate of India for his statement, and then I'm moving to the next speaker on my list, and I would like to invite the distinguished representative of Ukraine to give their statement. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the sake of time, I'll deliver a shortened version of our statement, and the full statement will be distributed in a due manner. Mr. Chair, the preservation of outer space for peaceful purposes is a complex and comprehensive challenge that requires international cooperation, transparency, and the establishment of a legal framework, adherence to which shall be guaranteed. By building trust, encouraging responsible behavior, including through strengthening international legal liability and preventing the weaponization of outer space, the international community can ensure that outer space remains a realm of peace and possibilities for all humankind. Today, the most important elements of the national infrastructure of most countries are dependent on satellites and the additional benefits that can be obtained from them. The commercialization of space paves the way not only for cooperation and collaboration. The ideologization of space weapons, in particular anti-satellite systems, is also moving the same path. The question of what consequences an arms race in outer space could have for the global stability and prosperity should be considered in the broadest context. The destabilizing effects caused by an arms race in outer space through the deployment of weapons in orbit or the deployment of ground-based weapons systems capable of reaching targets in orbit do not serve any of the interests of the sustainable and peaceful use of outer space. Ukraine believes that the issue of space security concerns space objects as well as space activities. Space security requires a comprehensive response covering both civilian and military aspects. Thus, it is advisable for the committee to take an active role in the maintaining of outer space for peaceful purposes, engaging both political figures and representatives of the scientific sphere in addressing this issue. Building mutual trust and understanding will definitely benefit from joint missions, joint research initiatives and projects. However, it is important that such joint activities are not just declared in adherence to the principles laid down in the Outer Space Treaty, but are regulated by a transparent, clear and understandable international treaty. That is why initiatives to develop an international code of conduct for responsible behavior in space should be welcomed. The increasing number of space objects also raises an important issue of space situation awareness. Therefore, the creation of international space traffic control protocols can reduce the risk of spacecraft collisions and further controversy. Another aspect is the increase of space debris. From a legal point of view, mandatory procedures for the safe decommissioning of satellites and other space objects should be introduced. Moreover, a space object does not cease to be an object of property rights after it becomes space debris. Therefore, it is necessary to develop a legal mechanism that would guarantee the clearance of outer space from space debris without violating property rights. Mr. Chair, distinguished delegates, I also would like to reiterate our position on the draft resolution of the UN General Assembly on space science and technology for promoting peace proposed by the Russian Federation. Despite the fact that there is a common interest of all humankind of promoting and expanding the exploration and use of outer space for peaceful purposes and in accordance with international law, we consider the draft resolution proposed by the Russian Federation unacceptable. This draft has been tabled for consideration in the most cynical way by the state, which, by its own actions, hinders not only development, but also the very existence of space science and technology in Ukraine. During the sessions of the scientific and technical and legal subcommittees, Ukraine emphasized that the development of space technologies should directly serve the peaceful use and exploration of outer space. However, Russia's unprovoked and unjustified full-scale invasion of Ukraine, launched on the 24th of February 2022, once again emphasizes the vulnerability of both outer space and space technologies and the international space order as such. Space technologies, which should improve people's lives by paving the way for the future, are widely used today by the aggressor state of Russia in the military sphere. The Russian war of aggression hinders space research, the development of space technologies, and space education in Ukraine. The constant threat of missile attacks on educational institutions, research centers, and production facilities of Ukrainian space companies leads to the fact that our country is deprived of the opportunity to use its full potential, which has been accumulated over many years in the space industry. Thus, the Russian Federation has deliberately created conditions under which Ukraine cannot benefit from space science and technology, nor can it fully participate in the exploration and use of outer space. In the view of the above, Ukraine cannot support the Russian draft resolution and would like to indicate that there is no consensus on the endorsement of this document by the committee for its further submission to the UN General Assembly. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
I would like to thank the distinguished representative of Ukraine. And before concluding the agenda item 6 of this morning, I would like to invite the Russian Federation to exercise the right of reply. Please, you have the floor.
Я благодарю вас, уважаемый господин председатель, за предоставление.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me the floor. I would like to use my right of reply to respond to Ukraine. And then I will speak on the US's statement. I will begin with our Ukrainian colleagues. And I would like to be interpreted literally. And I will speak slowly, but please interpret me literally. Please do not leave anything out. I will begin with Ukraine's statement to deal with the agenda item on maintaining outer space for peaceful purposes. This is one of the main tasks of the committee, and the Russian Federation on the 24th, next Monday, we'll be having open-ended consultations on this item, and we invite Ukraine to join these consultations and contribute to those deliberations. And it would be correct that these consultations take place in a non-politicized manner. We can leave accusations aside. We can think about space. We have a complicated situation, and we have to leave politicization aside and think about the negative impacts. We are ready to dialogue, and we call upon not just Ukraine, but all other colleagues to join those deliberations. Please, that would be the right thing. With regards to Ukraine, I'm sure colleagues forgot that some time ago, I will repeat this, with regards to the space cosmic potential of Ukraine, colleagues forget that some time ago, Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union. And the space potential of that country was created by the whole Soviet nation. That's a construction of companies, laboratories, and training of scientific personnel, and the training of experts throughout the whole of the Soviet Union. And as we know now, there are now independent states. All of that potential, scientific and technical potential, is in Belarus, Kazakhstan, Russia, and many other states. Please bear that in mind. Thirdly, regarding the use of space technologies, that is an interesting situation. A group of Western states who there's an unclear use of space technologies. A group of Western states. Am I being interpreted? Asks the speaker. There is a lot of potential. There are many satellites in orbit. Most of those satellites are civil systems, and there's a lot of intense development in the private sector. Currently, we have a situation in which many of those satellites have been used to obtain a military advantage in space and on land. And during the military conflict in Ukraine, there are many indications this is a fact. But at the same time, we are starting to hear on different platforms in Western countries that surely there will have to be an agreement for critical space infrastructure upon which many socio-economic processes on land depend, and they should not be subject to destructive acts. We have to announce a moratorium on the use of anti-satellite weapons. This seems to be correct, but it is an interesting situation. Part of it has a potential, or some parts can use it for military reasons, and others have to abstain from then returning the action. So there is an imbalance which has an influence on global security. This is totally obvious. We are willing to deal with these questions at the committee because precisely that is part of our agenda. It is the key task, preserving space, outer space for peaceful purposes, and leave politicizations aside and deal with technical issues. We are willing to do that, and we hope everyone will follow our example. Now I would like to respond to the United States on two questions. First of all, the resolution. We have listened with interest to the statement made by our US colleagues on what happened with the draft resolution at the UN Security Council. First of all, I would like to highlight again that this is a Security Council document. It is interesting because here at this committee we deal with many documents. Do we get questioned about that? So let's talk about it. Our colleague from the United States said the Russian Federation sabotaged. And I don't know if they have some sort of plan or some. So Russia vetoed the project, the draft resolution. Is there some sort of suspicion that we have a plan to deploy nuclear weapons in outer space? It's obvious that this is a baseless accusation. Based on the information that we have, there is no plan to have nuclear weapons in outer space. We have to act responsibly, and we expect that responsibility from the United States as a permanent member of the Security Council and as a space power. Everyone is watching when you make those declarations, those baseless declarations. Secondly, it is obvious that any agreement on nuclear disarmament or ballistic disarmament or reduction has to be a subject of long-term professional negotiations. You can't present those ideas to the Security Council and expect them to be passed immediately. Our colleagues in China also proposed a ban on nuclear weapons in space, and that was not accepted either. I will repeat this. Together with China, we proposed at the Security Council to ban the deployment of any nuclear weapon in outer space, but the United States could not accept that. I'm sure we can understand why. Because that decision requires pre-negotiations. It's the same for everyone. How could we accept, those ideas immediately? It's not logical. I could also say that the United States, for a long time, refused to negotiate on a Russian and Chinese draft resolution for the non-deployment of nuclear weapons in outer space. The US has not wanted to join that initiative for a long time. And that is regarding the deployment of a nuclear weapon in outer space for the first time. The US has refused to join in a dialogue to avoid an arms race in outer space. It's very strange. Everyone here knows that. I think the fact that we're dealing with disarmament here is not correct, because we are wasting everyone's time. If the Western powers wish, we can continue to do so. Thank you.
I would like to thank the distinguished representative of the Russian Federation. And then we will continue our consideration of agenda item 6 this afternoon. Distinguished delegates, I will now suspend the plenary meeting so that the working group on the long-term sustainability of outer space activities can hold its first meeting. Following the adjournment of the working group, we will resume the plenary and proceed with technical presentation. I now invite the chair of the working group on long-term sustainability of outer space activities to hold the first meeting of the working group. This meeting is now adjourned. Thank you. Distinguished delegates, the plenary meeting now is resumed. I would now turn to proceed with technical presentations. At this meeting, we have 4 technical presentations. Presenters are kindly reminded that technical presentations should be limited to 10 minutes in length. The first presentation on my list is on Artemis by the representative of the United States. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. I'm going to attempt to advance the slides from here. Thank you all, distinguished delegates, for the opportunity to discuss NASA's exciting lunar test program, Artemis.
Can I remove this one?
I have the tremendous privilege of leading the Moon to Mars program for NASA across the United States and throughout the world. Tens of thousands of people, with the support of their families, are building an enduring legacy of deep space exploration that will be felt by generations to come and go well beyond the microcosm of our planet. The Artemis journey will be worlds wide, but her story begins at the moon. I'll provide an update in a moment, but first I'd like to play a video showing us what some of that journey entails. Okay, let's try again. Nope. Okay, I believe we have a video that skipped it. I will attempt to do that later. Let's move on. There we go.
It's a new day in space exploration. As we sail on this new cosmic sea, there's so much to learn. There's so much to be excited about.
Artemis is different from anything humanity has ever embarked on before. And we will discover life-saving, earth-changing science and technology along the way.
We're delving deep into what science can be achieved by humans working together with robotic capabilities and future infrastructure to support a long-term human presence at the moon.
The Artemis generation stands ready to return humanity to the moon and then to take us further than ever before to Mars. Onward and upward.
Our program is first and fundamentally an international program, while NASA's leading Artemis partnerships are the key to achieving a sustainable and robust presence on and around the moon. Artemis will land the first woman, first person of color, and the first NASA international partner astronaut on the moon for the benefit of all. Our missions are far removed from the worn confines of low Earth orbit, which is to say they're incredibly ambitious and inherently risky. But pivotal science, the expansion of human knowledge, is the goal. It is the most noble thing we can do to understand our universe, to understand our place in the universe, and what it means to be here. That is why we explore. I don't know if it's moving. Could we advance the chart, please? Thank you. In symphony with robotic missions, human-led Artemis missions will unveil more of the moon than ever before. We will learn how to live further away from Earth for longer periods of time while exploring the lunar South Pole, an area shrouded in darkness but tempting in its mystery. These elements lay the foundation for crewed missions to the moon and eventually Mars. As part of prudent mission planning, we are constantly evaluating each element's progress and following the test data that comes from these activities. It is important to remember that Artemis fundamentally is a test activity. We're doing test flights and test missions, all of which will follow the objectives that have been laid out in NASA's widely publicized blueprint for long-term human presence and expanded exploration throughout the solar system. Our industry and international partners have a huge role to play in these foundational elements as we architect a future at the moon. Next, please. In late 2022, we successfully flew Artemis 1, the first crewed test, the first all-up test flight of the Space Launch System rocket and Orion spacecraft. We are well on our way to flying an international crew for our second crewed test. When I saw Artemis 1 launch, I personally thought about the tens of thousands of people who laid hands on the vehicle, the teams building this hardware. So many of them have devoted themselves and sacrificed time away from their families to do this work. When I think about these missions, I think about them first. Because of our incredible teams, the Artemis 1 flight was as close to flawless as possible, even with the thinnest of performance margins. It set new performance records and will serve as a standard for how we make deep space exploration attainable for more than 50 years after we left the moon. We also took a lot of risk on this flight by design because we did not have humans aboard. For future missions, the stakes are even higher. Safety will continue to be our North Star, and we are guided by our enduring commitment to the crews flying these missions using this hardware. Next, please. With Artemis, we are establishing a cadence of missions at the moon for discovery and to learn how to live and work together on another celestial body. I will discuss in detail now the progress of the crewed test missions that remain in the Artemis program. Artemis 1, the uncrewed flight, was essential to validating our exploration ground systems, the Space Launch System, and the Orion spacecraft, what we consider the foundational components of our human deep space exploration system. Even now, we are still learning from the data we received during that test flight, and it informs our way forward. NASA's Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Cook, and Canadian Space Agency's Jeremy Hansen will journey around the moon for Artemis 2. And this awe-inspiring moment sets the stage for humanity's next giant leap, Artemis 3. Planned as a lunar landing mission, Artemis 3 brings astronauts to the lunar South Pole using NASA's foundational human deep space capabilities and SpaceX's Starship lander. Artemis 4 will be NASA's second human mission to the lunar South Pole, again using Starship to journey to the lunar surface. 2 crew members will go to the surface while 2 crew members stay behind in the moon's polar orbit to set up the first lunar space station, Gateway. Artemis 5 is similar to Artemis 4 with dual surface and gateway expeditions. However, this time 2 crewmates will use a different human landing system to reach the surface, Blue Origin's Blue Moon lander. The addition of a lunar terrain vehicle will give astronauts improved access to explore and conduct science. In between these Artemis missions, a fulsome set of in-space and ground test objectives have to be met so we can move forward. Next. For Artemis 2, we're launching Orion into Earth orbit and then sending it into a free return trajectory around the moon before bringing the crew home. Before we send the crew to the moon, they will orbit the Earth for 24 hours to make sure the spacecraft is ready for lunar transit. We must ensure the life support systems aboard this vehicle and other systems are capable before we give them the opportunity to take our crew around the moon, which will take another 7 to 8 days. We have many critical objectives to meet with this mission, but really its significance lies in what it means for the entire enterprise. Next. Let's see, I think it's supposed to be the crew. All right. The Artemis 2 crew are 4 of the most amazing humans I've ever met. They are friends of mine. They represent our entire astronaut corps who are so devoted to our mission that they're willing to risk their lives. In turn, we are continually thinking about how the crew is going to interact with these systems and the risks they take every step of the way. You can see continued integration and testing of the European Service Module and crew module at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. At the Michoud Assembly Facility in Louisiana, the rocket core stage is ready to go and will relocate it to the Kennedy Space Center this summer. The crew has been diligently practicing in the Orion mock-up, in simulators, in the classroom, and in the Pacific Ocean. We will make adjustments as we go, maintaining flexibility based on hardware readiness. In all that we do, crew safety, again, is the compass directing us forward. Next. When we put humans on the moon with Artemis 3, this time at the lunar South Pole, it will open up a new frontier. Robotic precursor missions are helping to inform how that giant leap will take shape. The lunar South Pole is unlike any location humans have ever visited before. We know that there are places that have never seen the sun. We anticipate that the area is geologically diverse and rich in volatiles, including water ice. Artemis missions will help us interpret the evolution of the primordial lunar crust and design a framework for in-situ propellant development and life support systems. We need to know how much water is down there and how we can get access to it. That is the key to figuring out how to build an enduring presence at the moon. Next. For Artemis 3, we already have hardware in production ready for integration. The Starship lander is being built by SpaceX, and they are enacting one of the most aggressive test programs I have ever seen at their launch facility in Boca Chica in South Texas. Training for this especially unforgiving environment will be a challenge. Astronauts will encounter very low lighting coupled with thermal extremes. In Houston, NASA's Neutral Buoyancy Laboratory is replicating these near impossible partial gravity conditions at the bottom of a 40-foot pool. Here you will see the Artemis 2 crew practicing with a mock-up Starship elevator on a waterlogged lunar surface. 2 industry providers are working on spacesuits in tandem, and they've made significant progress in life support system testing. The launch vehicle, the crew module, and the European Service Module are all making strides forward, with the European Service Module ready to ship from Bremen, Germany to Kennedy Space Center this year. Next chart. Artemis 4 is ambitious, but it is also the logical next step after landing on the moon. For Artemis 4, astronauts will live and work in humanity's first lunar space station, Gateway. The mission includes an intricate choreography of multiple launches and spacecraft dockings in lunar orbit and features the debut of a larger, more powerful version of the SLS rocket and mobile launcher. 2 astronauts will board Starship and venture to the lunar surface. The other pair, meanwhile, will stay behind in Gateway, monitoring the expedition below from their vantage in polar orbit while conducting their own investigations and assembling the Gateway. Artemis 4 is a catalyst. We want to be able to build things in orbit. We want to be able to land heavy cargo. We need to build a Gateway to extend human endurance on the moon. Once Gateway is there with pre-staging logistics and consumables, expeditions on the moon can last as long as 30 days. To aggregate a Mars-grade vehicle, this is the approach. This is the evolutionary path to deep space exploration. Next chart. Before we fly Artemis 4, the first components of Gateway will fly independently on a Falcon 9 heavy expendable rocket, taking a year to slowly spiral out to polar orbit around the moon. For Artemis 4, we are upgrading the SLS rocket to the Block 1B version and a new pad system called Mobile Launcher 2. This will give us the ability to fly payloads with Orion to cislunar space. IHAB, Europe's first enduring contribution to the Gateway missions, will also fly with the Artemis 4 crew. The welding and primary structure of IHAB is currently underway in Torino. The primary structure of HALO, another Gateway module, is complete. We have more hardware coming, and there's no stopping this forward momentum. Next chart. By the time we do Artemis 5, we'll be able to traverse extremely long distances at our landing sites and expand science sampling methods. We're also bringing a different human landing system. Artemis 5 will be NASA's 3rd human mission to the lunar South Pole, but this time 2 crew members will descend to the surface in Blue Origin's Blue Moon lander. This spring, NASA selected 3 companies to advance designs for a lunar terrain vehicle in which Artemis astronauts will drive to reach more remote areas at the lunar South Pole. As like with Artemis 4, 2 crew members will continue Gateway research investigations as the other duo conducts a surface expedition. Next. Development of the Orion service module is underway in Bremen, Germany for Artemis 5. Certification testing for the production of the new RS-25 retrofit engines to power the SLS rocket, beginning with Artemis 5, was completed in early April of this year. The 3 lunar terrain vehicles companies I mentioned earlier, Intuitive Machines, Lunar Outpost, and Venturi Astrolab, are refining concepts for their rover. The vehicle must be able to transport 2 crew members and equipment at least 20 kilometers on a single charge. Progress is in motion now that will exponentially improve the scientific returns of Artemis 5 and beyond by combining the best of human and robotic exploration. Let's see, next chart, please. I'm almost done. Apologies for going over. Yep. Okay. When we talk about endurance, we mean enabling capabilities for mission longevity. Artemis builds on nearly 24 years of continuous human habitation and the proven concept of rapid innovation in low Earth orbit, bringing it into the lunar sphere. I'm proud to report that we already have hardware in production through the Artemis 9 crewed test flight. Additionally, NASA has expanded its contracts with SpaceX and Blue Origin to develop cargo versions of the human landers, early designs that you can see here. And in April, the US and Japan signed an agreement to advance sustainable human exploration of the moon. Japan will also design, develop, and operate a pressurized rover for crewed and uncrewed exploration on the moon, beginning with Artemis 7. NASA, in turn, will provide its launch and delivery, as well as 2 opportunities for Japanese astronauts to travel to the lunar surface. Next, please. Artemis is the stepping stone on our way to the red planet. We're going to need all of our partners, everyone in this upcoming generation, to do it. Let's first sustain human crews at the moon. Let's build a flexible architecture with applications for more than one world, one that allows equitable access to outer space. Then, and only then, can we figure out how to go further into the solar system. As I mentioned earlier, our international partners are contributing hardware and components. For example, the European Space Agency is providing the service module for Orion. The Mohammed bin Rashid Space Agency is providing the airlock for the Gateway Space Station. And the Canadian Space Agency is providing external robotics and a next-generation robotic arm. Through science, we will learn how to thrive far from our home planet. In this particular odyssey, our international partners are providing several instruments and payloads to help us learn. 2 of our early Gateway science payloads will be provided by ESA and JAXA. These instruments will help us keep astronauts safe by studying the effects of space weather and informing models for cancer, cardiovascular, and central nervous system effects on Artemis crews. NASA wants international cooperation on every scale. Our existing partnerships, a span from CubeSats to gateway elements to pressurized rovers on the moon. Other countries will send their own payloads and satellites to the moon, with several missions in proposal and formulation. Next. With Apollo, we went alone. This time, the world is coming along, and we are better for it. How we go is as important as that we go. When we explore the universe, we lead with our values. Through the Artemis Accords, we're establishing a set of principles to guide space exploration, cooperation amongst the nations participating. Grounded in the Outer Space Treaty, this agreement codifies that all activities are conducted for peaceful purposes. To date, more than 40 countries have joined us in signing the accords to promote openness, transparency, shared data, and interoperability. We will assuredly welcome additional countries in the months and years ahead, energizing new partners on this shared journey of exploration and discovery. So my final chart is next. Artemis is not just America's endeavor, it belongs to everyone. Astronauts talk about when they see the Earth isolated in the vacuum of space, it changes them. They see a world without borders. You see the fragility of the ecosystem. You see the existing questions we have yet to answer. Artemis gives back by expanding our foundational knowledge with the responsible integration of humans and machines. There are incredible things that we can not only learn but do. Artemis is truly for all humanity. I'm honored to be a part of this movement where, with our partners, we are committed to making this world and new worlds a better place. Thank you so much for your attention. I'm grateful for your support, and thank you to all of our Artemis team members for their steadfast dedication. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for your presentation. The second presentation on my list is on space sustainability, a perspective from a French data service provider, by the representative of France. Please, you have the floor.
Bonjour à tous. Good morning, everyone. I'm the sales director at Saffron Systems. It's a French company in 27 countries. We have 90,000 employees, basically in aeronautics, space and defense wings, and 1,500 of us work in the space sector. Saffron is a stakeholder that's committed to the responsible use of outer space. In 2022, we co-signed the 10 proposals of the Space Earth Initiative for Sustainable Space. And we've also signed the Zero Debris Charter. We want to be at the leading edge of technology with innovation and innovative solutions like I'm going to talk about today.
Safran est présent sur plusieurs niches technologiques.
We are present in several different niche platforms, such as electric propulsion. We're the European leader in plasma propulsion, and we also provide space monitoring equipment. And Saffron Data Systems is a global leader in telemeasurement with its Cortex products. And we have Saffron Data Systems provides a unique service based on passive radio frequency technology. And I'll be talking about this in a presentation. With the purchase of Aurelia, Saffron now has a complete supply of positioning, navigation, and timing. We work with legacy constructors, but we're also providing reusable launchers such as Callisto, Themis, and Maya Space. To have a good knowledge of the space situation, we need a combination of different technologies: radar observations, optics, radio frequency, and these are completed by space data. With our global network of radio frequency sensors, we contribute to knowledge of the global space environment with detection, identification, and monitoring of satellites, space situational awareness, SSA, and comprehension of space activities with the detection, identification, and monitoring of activities. That's SDA. A. Safran's goal is to provide a global and detailed view of the space domain, updated as often as possible, 24/7, with detailed positioning of satellites with a confidence or index. So we provide monitoring service called WeWatch. The system is based on a network of passive RF sensors in 4 geographic areas: in the US, in Texas specifically, in Europe, in France, and in Asia and Thailand, and in Oceania in Australia. Then our sensors scan 100 degrees of the geo drift on different frequency bands: C, K, U, S, X, and KA on the vertical axes, as you can see on the screen. And WeWatch detects all the active objects on the geo arc and signals their longitude on the horizontal axis. In WeWatch, events are monitored and registered permanently, and we have information such as the arrival of a new satellite. We detect satellite drift. Then we deal with communication vectors and interferences and the longitude of satellites. Longitude provided by WeWatch is a monitoring system, as the name indicates. The principle of WeTrack is an inverse GPS with 3 antennae on the ground at a distance of 300 to 1,000 kilometers, and a satellite, and then we measure the time difference on arrival. WeTrack delivers these measures raw, and then we disseminate the information to provide ephemeris data. And you can see that we monitor more than 400 satellites using WeTrack, and we have permanent tracking of the 400 satellites, as I said. Then, apart from the raw measures and ephemeris, we provide the detection of maneuvers and status vectors. We have a very high revisit rate. Every 40 minutes, we can detect maneuvers. Another advantage of radio frequency is the reliability of the identification of satellites based on their RF footprint. Since the opening of the service 7 years ago, we've registered all data that we apply to artificial intelligence to study and understand the behavior of satellites when something is unexpected or unsuitable. Some satellite operations have RF data to improve their flight dynamics and optimize their operations and reduce uncertainty about collision risks. That as there is no weather or day-night constraints, passive RF technology means we can continue track objects on the geostationary arc, such as the MEV-2 in February 2021, the surveillance of the orbital positions or of a satellite, such as we see here, that's Intelsat 1002, which will be joined by MEV-2. We can see that MEV-2 is in the slot, and it's synchronized but non-coupled. And on the 12th of April, they would be coupled, and now they're both coupled, and we monitor them. If they are separated, we will know immediately. Passive RF measures are promising for cislunar missions. They're difficult to see on the screen, but we tracked Artemis Orion from the beginning to the moon. That's more than 360,000 kilometers, and we are often requested to follow similar moon missions. On the following slide, we can see the interorbital mission, and we can see the layup phase of the Telkomsat 113 satellite. And we can see that in different orbits. At the end of this year, 2024, we will open the low orbit service MEO and LEO with the tracking of more than 4,000 satellites with a 10-meter precision with 9 daily revisits. We have a network of more than 80 antennas deployed in the world, and by frequency band we have 3 WeTrack antennae, 1 antenna for WeWatch and a supplementary one for redundance. So our sensors are monitored permanently from our company in Normandy in France. And to preserve this shared asset, we have to all work together. We can provide innovative solutions for tracking, and we can help avoid collisions, and we can monitor the security of long-term space activities. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. The third presentation on my list is on Astra Carta, a roadmap for sustainability in space and using space for sustainability on Earth, by the representative of the United Kingdom. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to be able to address you today and to speak about the Astra Carta. I would like to thank the UK Department for Science, Innovation and Technology for extending this opportunity. My name is Jennifer Jordan Saifi, and I am the CEO of the Sustainable Markets Initiative. The Sustainable Markets Initiative is a global, CEO-led private sector organization focused on accelerating the world's transition to a sustainable future. We were founded in 2020 by His Majesty King Charles III, then the Prince of Wales, and now head of the Commonwealth of 56 nations, many of which are represented here today. We strongly believe that sustainability and genuine engagement with the private sector is a practical route to peaceful cooperation on Earth and in space. Through our mandates, the Terra Carta and the Astra Carta, the Sustainable Markets Initiative works to align its efforts across industries, finance, and countries to help deliver on the Paris Climate Agreement, the Convention on Biological Diversity, the Convention to Combat Desertification, the Sustainable Development Goals, the UN Declaration of Human Rights, the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, the UN Outer Space Treaty, and the UN Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space's Guidelines on the Long-Term Sustainability of Outer Space Activities. At the Sustainable Markets Initiative, we recognize that governments cannot deliver these ambitious global goals, which require trillions of dollars of investment on their own. The good news is that the private sector continues to deliver inspiring progress across all industries and in all regions of the world. Private sector momentum on space sustainability is on the rise. The past decade has shown just how quickly industry transformation can happen when you reimagine and re-engineer business models. We need only look to mobile technology, electric vehicles, e-commerce, and AI for inspiration. Each of these industry evolutions were catalyzed by the balance of convenience and responsibility. Looking forward, new employment opportunities, entire new industries and markets rooted in sustainability are within our grasp, with the potential for unprecedented economic growth. This is also true for the rapidly growing space economy, which is already integrating with Earth-based industries. Systems-level change within sustainable markets is driven by consumer and investor demand, affordable access to sustainable alternatives, and an enhanced partnership between public, private, and philanthropic sectors. As we work to mobilize the space economy on sustainability, I would like to share some of the Astra Carta's principles and practical actions. First, the next giant leap. We must value nature and life beyond Earth. As stewards of Earth, it is our responsibility to apply the lessons that we have learned about the fragility and interconnectivity of nature and life on our own planet as we move to beyond Earth environments. We must ensure a default sustainable orientation. This means putting sustainability at the center of our principles, our businesses, our analysis, our decisions, and our actions. Space exploration should become synonymous with responsible stewardship. We must realize infinite possibilities. By recognizing science, technology, and innovation as a human trait, we can push the boundaries of what we believe to be possible. Exciting solutions that will extend our reach into space include space-based solar power generation, self-sustaining habitats, in-situ resource utilization, advances to increase payload, quantum communications, closed-loop food production systems, lightweight and high-strength materials, and the potential of fusion energy. Second, achieving sustainability in space. We must create sustainable markets for space. Affordable access will drive scientific discoveries, paving the way for breakthroughs like astronomy, materials science, propulsion technology, and planetary sciences. Cost effectiveness will also open new markets for industries like space tourism, health systems, Earth monitoring, and asteroid mining. As new markets emerge and as the space economy grows, it will be critical for sustainability to be put at the center of research and development, investment considerations, and industry partnerships. We must address space debris mitigation and removal. The conveniences of mega constellations, global positioning, and Earth observation should be weighed against the corresponding growth of space debris, particularly in low Earth orbit. Here, we must target the sources of debris before they reach orbit, while also seeking methods to tackle the hazards of current debris. Technology, finance, ingenuity, and diplomacy across public and private sectors must be leveraged if we are to secure our assets and maintain orbital access for all. We must move to adopt universal standards and metrics. By setting clear benchmarks and targets, we can drive continuous improvement, innovation, and accountability across the space economy. This can be achieved by building on established industry standards while also encouraging the development of new sustainability standards to address emerging technologies and mission requirements. Third, one people, one voyage. We must ensure the peaceful exploration, cooperation, and use of outer space. Cooperation that extends beyond national borders must be the cornerstone of our efforts. Just as the United Nations and national governments prioritize the peaceful use of outer space, so too must the private sector. We must ensure equitable access. It is essential that all peoples and all countries have equal opportunities to participate in space activities. Through inclusivity and benefit sharing, we can eliminate blind spots in our implementation of solutions, ensuring that scientific knowledge, technological advancements, and economic opportunities are shared fairly, leaving no one behind. We must enhance legal frameworks for space. As activity in space grows exponentially, legal frameworks provide the necessary rules and regulations to ensure responsible and sustainability-aligned conduct while protecting the rights and interests of all stakeholders. By upholding globally recognized space-focused laws, safety protocols, and security measures, we can mitigate risks, foster important trust, and ensure the long-term viability of space exploration. And finally, we must accelerate space education and public outreach. Inspiring the right minds at the right time can change the course of history. While our activities in space already affect the lives of nearly everyone on the planet, we must ensure that the conveniences are not taken for granted. We must foster global awareness while also nurturing the next generation of space enthusiasts, scientists, engineers, innovators, and policymakers who will shape the future of sustainable space exploration for generations to come. Ladies and gentlemen, space may well be the final frontier, but it cannot become another Wild West where it's every country and every company for itself. It is critical that we work in partnership with the United Nations, national space agencies, and with the private sector as we accelerate space activity and as we explore the environments of the Moon, Mars, and beyond. If achieving a sustainable future is the growth story of our time, our united and sustainability-aligned ventures into space offer infinite possibilities. The Astrocarta is our private sector pledge to future generations, a promise that we will navigate the next frontier with wisdom, foresight, and responsibility. As we embark on this sustainable journey to the stars, let us be stewards for the spark of life that our planet has nurtured. We hope you will join the Sustainable Markets Initiative in this vital global effort, one that recalls that we are one people sharing one planet and one future. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Distinguished delegates, in view of the time limitation, we have scheduled technical presentations to this afternoon session. I will shortly adjourn this meeting. Before doing so, I would like to inform delegates of our schedule of work for this afternoon. We'll meet promptly at 3 p.m. We'll continue consideration of Agenda Item 5, General Exchange of Views. We'll continue and hopefully conclude our consideration of Agenda Item 7, Report of the Scientific and Technical Committee on its 61st session. We'll begin our consideration of Agenda Item 8, Report of the Legal Subcommittee on its 63rd session. We'll then proceed with technical presentations. We have 6 technical presentations scheduled for this afternoon. I would like to inform delegates that the Working Group on the Use of Nuclear Power Sources in Outer Space will hold its intersessional meeting during lunchtime today from 1:30 p.m. to 2:50 p.m. in room M2 and hybrid. MS Teams link was shared with delegation. I would also like to inform delegates that a number of side events are scheduled during lunchtime today, and they are listed on the COPUOS session webpage. Distinguished delegates, are there any questions or comments on this proposed schedule? I see none. This meeting is adjourned until 3 p.m. this afternoon.